Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Acadia After Dark podcast. As always, I'm the Reverend Redbeard, and I am so happy to be with you tonight. Had a fun week. Long weekend for some in the US here. Monday was just a normal day for the most part. And today I had a sit down interview with the I guess she'd be the founder, the person who started Bar Harbor Ghost Stores, Jennifer. Super awesome guest. She was really nice to talk to, so we're gonna have that next week. That'll be coming up. It'll be its own episode, so next week will be pre-recorded. And then you'll find that on the same day, Friday upload. So hopefully everybody will enjoy that. She was really, really knowledgeable in a lot of the stuff here in Maine. Even the stuff that I research is just such a knowledgeable source of information on it that she had more than I've known or been able to find on my own. So lucky to have that connection. It's really cool. And aside from that, we have been streaming Eerie Worlds. I don't know how people are feeling about that. I enjoy the game, having a blast playing it. Plan on continue streaming it here or there when I get the opportunities. And we're going to try and continue climbing the ranks in that. In fact, after the stream for the podcast here, I don't know what I'm going to end up doing tomorrow, but I might stream some more Eerie Worlds either tomorrow or Saturday. We'll see. And I do plan on doing a stream eventually of Silent Hill 2. And the problem with that one I'm running into, I really want to do that one since Silent Hill is, in Maine. And it really fits the whole theme of the show. Aside from that, I just wanted to make sure that I am able to play it properly on my PlayStation and stream it to YouTube instead of having to use that crappy little like Twitch patch thing that they use. I just don't like the look of it. It's really, really bad. So once I figure out how I can do that, we'll be in business. But that's a project for another day. For now, Eerie Worlds will be where the gaming is at on the channel. And we're still plucking away at the book. We're 8 chapters deep at this point. I would like to say I only have a little bit left, but I know these last few chapters are going to be a haul. That being said, I was a guest on Tim Binnall's podcast the other day, Binnall of America, and he actually pointed me in the direction of a very interesting source, someone who's been researching and cataloging big cat sightings here in Maine, which I've yet to get to the chapter I was going to do on the big cats to follow up on the video that we had on the channel. And so I'm going to try and reach out to her and see if I can get some of her information, have a chat with her. Love to get her on the show if I can manage it somehow. And then, what else do we got going on this week? We're going to be probably taking a little bit of time this podcast to look at some trail cam footage. Well, it's technically bird cam footage. It's from a bird feeder. And this was one that I found interesting. I bring it up because it's on the subject of big cats, so we'll see what people think of that. And we've also had some really weird activity going on the internets there with the most recent changes in certain platforms, and then in some unusual things going on Reddit's UFO community forums. So why don't we just jump into the first part of this here? And first thing that I want to preface this video with is that this is from a source in a Facebook group who apparently recorded this in Maine on her bird feeder camera, and it's taken at night. Now, I'm unable to judge the distance of the bird cam, but it was an interesting video. I'll let it roll. I'm going to pause it at a couple of points and show some things that I'm noticing. But the main thing that I'm going to describe here is this cat that they show in this footage. I don't know where this was taken. And here, we're going to move the visualizer down. So, according to them, this cat was too big to be just a normal house cat. Now, I'm going to pause it at one point in this video because there's two things that bug me here. This is a pretty good shot that I'm getting. Now, what we have here, when you're looking at large cats, the two that we talk about when you're thinking of that in Maine, is you're going to have a Fisher cat, which are usually black with pointy ears and kind of a bushier tail. Or you're going to have a bobcat, which has rounded ears and no tail. Actually, no, the bobcat has the tufts on it. If it's a Canadian, if it's a lynx, it doesn't have it. Let me see. I gotta double check that now, because I'm wondering if the Maine bobcat has the little thingies, because I know they have the rounded ears. Anyways, my point is that, yeah, they have pointed ears. But they have like a weird little tuft at the top. And there's like, you can see in this video, this cat has a tail. So there's obviously ruling out a bobcat. What I'm seeing at the front here are pointed ears, which cougars don't have. So what I am seeing, in my not at all expert opinion in this, is I'm seeing a large black house cat being super generous and assuming that the person is legit, that this bird feeder is high enough up that this is not just a house cat. The next thing that I could say is possibly a Fisher. Maybe. I'm posting that video up online tomorrow when the podcast goes up. So if you're listening, audio listeners, I know you hate to do it, but go on over to Instagram and check it out. I want to see what people think of the video because I did find it interesting, and I've been talking about large cats. I personally, in my opinion, I think it's a house cat. I have no reason to think that this is anything other than that. And unless somebody can point to a different video that can show me maybe a better perspective of what these bird feeder cams look like, because the bird feeder cams that I've seen don't have the best of cameras, and they kind of have this weird lens because they're only meant to really be seeing what's immediately on the post. So maybe I'm just misjudging this. I'm misjudging the distance, and it is a lot bigger than I'm assuming it is. But to me, it just looks like a house cat. Anyways, there was also some interesting chatter going on this week between Reddit and 4chan. So last week we touched on, before we got other news of things that were going on, last week there was a whole thing with News Nation releasing this footage and a documentary that they've been working on, along with an interview with several whistleblowers that are reportedly corroborating evidence that's been turned over that show U.S. assets recovering alien technology. And one of the videos that they showed, I'm not going to show it on the air because it's probably copyrighted. I'm sure you'll be able to pretty easily find it if you go to Reddit or many other places. I may post it to the socials simply for the sake of doing so, but I really don't want to get a copyright strike, so I'm not going to do it here. Anyways, the original video was identified as something that was taken in a night vision camera, supposedly from a helicopter, as it is basically grabbing what looks like almost like a large white egg and lifting it to put it onto like a truck bed or into like a cargo bed. So when I look at the video the first time, if you look at it in the normal night vision, perspective in night vision is really weird, and a lot of people pretty quickly were like immediately trying to say it was computer generated or it was AI generated or something like that. And listen, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna say it's not a possibility of it being AI generated. This is the problem we deal with nowadays. Is until it is like we have physical evidence in hand, anything could be AI generated. And even if it's not, it could be completely misinterpreted depending on what person is looking at it. So we ourselves are unreliable witnesses because of our own technology now. This is not a fun place to be in as a researcher. I don't like it. As a ufologist, as a cryptozoologist, all of the things, I do not like the current situation of technology. But that being said, we have this world we're living in it. So what are we looking at? The footage, it looks like this object, whatever it is, appears to me as if it is pretty solid, whatever material it's made out of, whether it be a metal or some other thing. It seems to be pretty hard or solid object. So when I did a little digging, it's coming from this whistleblower who has been posting to 4chan previously. And so the current perspective of people on the internet, if you're not aware, is pretty weird. And honestly, I don't want to get too much into it because they're very conspiracy minded and I just don't buy into a lot of it. The part of the video that I find interesting, and here's why, is that there's a second video that has been uploaded and it's almost an identical craft. This one is taken in a mountain range, okay, supposedly in the Arctic. It comes along with a set with 4 photos that were reportedly uploaded by a whistleblower to 4chan of all places. So take everything with a grain of salt here. And potentially, according to the supposed whistleblower, they have had conversations with multiple scientists that are working in this covert like recovery project, as well as actual alien entities that they're able to communicate with. If you see the News Nation interview, they talk about a lot of the same stuff. So all I'm saying is either this person, this whistleblower that is then being fed stuff on Reddit, is either intentionally trying to lead us to believe that he is connected in the same way as, what's his name, Jeremy, I can't remember his name. Anyways, the new one on the new documentary will go into it on Mundeth on whatever network it ends up airing on. I do believe it's a News Nation production, so I'm assuming they'll do it. And I'm really just so tired of having to like use them as a source, but they're the only people covering stuff like this right now. So I don't know, man. it's a weird place to be in the world because there's not a lot of good media out there, period, right now. So we take what we can get, right? The the craft, personally, I am not. I'm more skeptical of the legitimacy of the claims, but I'm even more skeptical of what this object appears to be because I saw a ASAT, which is basically a high altitude um, monitoring balloon that looked very, very similar. And I don't see anything else that it could potentially be as far as known technology that we have. But those balloons are not like something you would be picking up with a crane or something. Like they're not, they're big, but they're not that. Um, they wouldn't be lifting that way. So I don't know. If you have any opinions on it, just tell me, because I posted a couple of videos and thoughts on it on the various social platforms, and people had a lot of opinions on the videos, in particular of the most recent one from the supposed 4chan leak. Because the problem that we're running into is between AI generated content kind of becoming more prolific, and then having all of these anonymous sources that are being platformed in the media and stuff, we're we're walking a pretty thin line where it's hard to know what is a legitimate force for good in the fight for disclosure and understanding of these objects, phenomena, extraterrestrials, whatever it ends up being ultimately. And then the actual people that are kind of intentionally standing in the way of that by continuing to sandbag the investigations and offer false platitudes and things like that. And like one specific example earlier this week, 2 days ago, if you're living in the world, you probably know that Donald Trump is now the United States president. And day one, he said that he was going to give us a report of the drone situation that was a big issue in New Jersey. Still is. According to many people I talked to, they say it's still happening. It's just not being reported as much on the news. But he had said that he was going to give a day one report on that. So then the day he comes in, he's inaugurated. While in the Oval Office, he makes a comment to his, I want to say it's his chief of staff, and asks her to immediately go get him any information they have on the drones so that they can get to the bottom of it. It's now been 2 full days, and we have not heard another word of these drones. But what he did do today, which I tend to be skeptical of any good things anybody in government right now is doing, least of all him, for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into it on here, but he signed an executive order to have the rest of the JFK papers as well as the MLK documents released. So I'll be pretty interested to read that. Don't know what it'll shake out to be. Probably a whole lot of nothing we don't already know, because that's kind of how this stuff went before. But it's an interesting bit. So anyways, we're going to get into a little bit of local discussion because we were talking earlier with Jennifer, as I said, and she had a very, very interesting series of stories, and we had a good chat about a lot of things. But it kind of got me on a thought process of something, because I had recently done the video on the Kawakwa, and as we were talking last week about the Wendigo, I finally, knowing her, as a Micmac tribe member, as well as a member of the Wabanaki Nation, who's actually gotten the okay from her tribal leaders to discuss their story and their history, I got to ask her about some of their, legends and things like that. And she pointed me in the direction of a few interesting things. The one that I really struck me the most, and it's something that I want that I hadn't. I guess I knew it. I didn't really understand it, so it was cool to hear. So one thing when it comes to a lot of Maine history, and this came up the other day on the podcast, Tim's podcast, was that when it comes to the history of Maine, we kind of have three sets of history. Okay, so we have post-colonial, like the incorporation of Maine. So once Maine became a state, that's in the 1800s. Now, in that time period, up until then, we had been a part of Massachusetts technically. We had been a member of the colonies, but we were technically property of Massachusetts. That's one set of our history, okay? Prior to that, we had the history, which is what technically the show is named after, and the area is named after, and that's the Acadians, okay? So Tim asked me about that the other day because honestly, it's one thing that we haven't discussed on the show. So I will, and I promise, I will give a thorough and actual discussion of the history of the Acadians, so people do have that reference. Because it is an interesting history, it's just not a history that I typically dive into in this show. But him asking about it did prompt me to think I probably should. Because if it's in our name, I'm sure that it's probably something that people are interested in to understand where the name and the origin of the name comes from. So that'll be something we'll be talking about in a series. That won't be a part of the Acadia After Dark series. It will just be a standalone thing. Look forward to that. And then another part of it, that's another part of our history, is prior to the Acadians. So this is in the 17th century that we have the Acadians here, okay? Prior to that, the area, as I've mentioned many times on the show, was inhabited by the Penobscot Indians, the Micmac, and two other tribes that essentially were all parts of the Wabanaki Nation. And they essentially made up our history before we had a history. And their stories are very inherent to a lot of what I read in our history. So when I cover certain subjects, I'm speaking from my understanding as a colonial researcher, of a person that typically is researching from like the more modern history and then interpreting it in context of modern times. And I need to make a conscious effort in researching more, first of all, about the history of the Wabanaki people, the various tribes that lived in the area and their different legends, because they all have such a rich and diverse history and so many stories and legends that it's all worth checking into. But I also need to make sure that I identify that there's different interpretations based off of those differences. And we have that with the three eras that I cover in the show. And especially going into the next season, because we're going to have several season stories in the next season that are very much rooted in pre-colonial era history and folklore. So we only dabbled in that this season. Next season, there's going to be much more of that. So that's something that I am going to make a conscious effort myself. And it's just, if you notice, if you notice kind of a change in the way some of those subjects are handled, that's probably going to be why. And I think it'll ultimately make for better storytelling and better content. But anyways, there was one other thing that she brought up too, and it was a pretty cool story. But I'm going to save it for when the live episode comes out, because I really want people to hear the interview with her is so good. She was just, like I said, so knowledgeable on what she does, And if you're ever coming to Maine and you listen to some people that listen to Acadia After Dark, are obviously already from Maine and live here. If you live in Maine and you've never been to Bar Harbor, I highly recommend it, first of all. But if you do, absolutely make it a point to go and see the Bar Harbor ghost tours. They are one of a kind, definitely worth experiencing yourselves. There's also another ghost tour in the area that I don't necessarily have as favorable of an opinion of. So if you go to Bar Harbor, make sure you go to the Bar Harbor ghost tours, not Bar Harbor anything else, okay? I don't want to have them ask for too much, so I'm not going to say more than that. But that's something that I was not really aware of, and now that I am, I kind of want to be more conscious of that as well. So that episode with her, I think, is going to go out next week, the normal podcast day, and I'm going to pre-record some of that show. But in lieu of the live broadcast, I'll just be streaming the Eerie World stuff a couple of days this week to kind of make up the live stuff. So if any big news or any real events come up, I'll probably cover it on those live streams, because I'm going to try with the next live stream of doing something slightly different and actually doing some research during the live stream. I'm going to see if I can juggle playing cards while researching. I'm sure that'll go wonderfully the first time I AFK out of a game or something. But if I don't, it'll be kind of cool, because I figure even if I am doing that, if I can get some collective thoughts on the research that I'm doing, and point me in the direction of something cool once in a while, that wouldn't be bad. That being said, I send out the call again. If you have any of your own scary stories or any mysteries, paranormal phenomena in Maine that you would like me to look into, or just something you want me to tell me about that I could share on air, just hit me up on the socials or drop me a line on the comment section somewhere, and I would definitely love to hear your story, because hearing other people's stories is like part of the most enjoyable part of this whole experience, because people have so much to say about their different stuff going on in Maine. Maine really is just, it's such a huge place with such a diverse population of people with so many different experiences, and it's so cool to hear so many of them. So I would love to hear more of yours, especially if you're from Maine or you've been to Maine and you've had something weird happen to you. Hit me up. That does go for the rest of New England, but as you've seen, obviously, the gears of the show have shifted so much to more Maine focused content, because there's just such a wealth of stories here. And someday I will get to the end of that research, but not today. Not today. Anyways, we're gonna probably run her down, wrap her up for this episode. I am definitely looking forward to the interview episode going up. I'm sure you people will love it. She's just gonna be such a cool thing. I want to do more interviews. I got a couple of people I'm talking to right now. I'm gonna be on Tim Banal's podcast. Probably, he said February. I'm not sure when, so that'll be on the lookout there. Couple of other people have reached out about trying to set up a time to either come on the show here or I go on their show. So I'll be figuring that out. So there'll be more, just not the normal podcast content, but just other stuff to kind of go along with it. It's all just talking about spooky shit mostly anyways. So I think that'll be pretty enjoyable for everybody. And as I said, tomorrow I think we'll probably play some Eerie Worlds and call it. I'm ranked 9, I think, right now. So Revenant, got 8 more to go. I think we can get to rank 1. I'm not gonna get it this season before the reset. What, Tuesday, I think? Or no, tomorrow. Shit, yeah. No, I'm not gonna get the. I'm not gonna get it before the reset, but I will definitely be getting to rank 1 soon. So I'm gonna keep on plucking along at that. Anyways, I hope y'all stay safe, keep your lanterns lit. I'll be back with you next week, same time, same place. Spend the Reverend Redbeard. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.